Love is a word not often mentioned in Buddhist texts. And the love compassion they talk about is not an emotion, at least not what we usually think of as an emotion. It's certainly not what we call romantic love, which has little to do with love. It's good to investigate what love is and how it is connected to practice, since the two fruits of our practice are wisdom and compassion. Menzan Zenji, 1683–1769, was one of the greatest scholars of Soto Zen, and, more than some of the old masters, he makes practice clear. Sometimes we read the old texts and build up a picture of practice that has no relationship to buying bread at the grocery store. Menzan Zenji's words are plain. He says, when, through practice, you know the reality of zazen thoroughly, the frozen blockage of emotion thought will naturally melt away. He says, however, if you think you have cut off illusory thought, instead of clarifying how emotion thought melts, the emotion thought will come up again as though you have cut the stem of a blade of grass or the trunk of a tree and left the root alive. A lot of people misunderstand practice as the cutting off of illusory thoughts. Of course, thoughts are illusory, but, as he says, if you cut them off instead of clarifying how emotion thoughts melts, you'll learn little. Many people have little enlightenment experiences, but because they have not clarified how emotion thought melts, the sour fruits of emotion thought will be what they eat in daily life. He writes, emotion thought is the root of delusion, a stubborn attachment to a one-sided point of view formed by our own conditioned perceptions. Much of the practice at this center is about clarifying how emotion thought melts. First, we have to see what it is, the emotional, self-centered thoughts that we fuss with all the time. Their absence, he states, is the enlightened state, satori itself. Without exception, we're all caught in emotion thought, but the degree can vary greatly. There is a vast difference between someone who's caught 95% of the time and someone who's caught 5%. Strictly speaking, relationships are with everything, the cup, the rug, the mountains, people. But for today's talk, we'll talk about relationships with people because these always seem to produce the most difficulty. And if we haven't been hiding in a cave for 20 years, we all have a relationship with someone. In that relationship, there's always some genuine love and some false love. How much of our love is genuine depends on how we practice with false love, which breeds in the emotion thought of expectations, hopes, and conditioning. When emotion thought is not seen as empty, we expect that our relationship should make us feel good. As long as the relationship feeds our pictures of how things are supposed to be, we think it's a great relationship. Yet when we live closely with somebody, that sort of dream doesn't have much of a chance. As the months go by, the dream collapses under pressure, and we find that we can't maintain our pretty pictures of ourselves or of our partners. Of course, we'd like to keep the ideal picture we have of ourselves. I'd like to believe that I'm a fine mother, patient, understanding, wise. If only my children would agree with me, it would be nice. But still, this nonsense of emotion thought dominates our lives. Particularly in romantic love, emotion thought gets really out of hand. I expect of my partner that he should fulfill my idealized picture of myself. And when he ceases to do that, as he will before long, then I say, the honeymoon's over. What's wrong with him? He's doing all the things I can't stand. And I wonder why I am so miserable. My partner no longer suits me, he doesn't reflect my dream picture of myself, he doesn't promote my comfort and pleasure. None of that emotional demand has anything to do with love. As the pictures break down, and they always will in a close relationship, such love turns into hostility and arguments. So if we're in a close relationship, from time to time we're going to be in pain, because no relationship will ever suit us completely. There's no one we will ever live with who will please us in all the ways we want to be pleased. So how can we deal with this disappointment? Always we must practice getting closer and closer to experiencing our pain, our disappointment, our shattered hopes, our broken pictures. and that experiencing is ultimately nonverbal. We must observe the thought content until it is neutral enough that we can enter the direct and nonverbal experience of the disappointment and suffering. When we experience the suffering directly, the melting of the false emotion can begin and true compassion can emerge. Fulfilling our vows is the only thing we can do for one another. The more we practice over the years, the more an open and loving mind develops. When that development is complete, which means that there is nothing on the face of the earth that we judge, that is the enlightened and compassionate state. The price we must pay for it is lifelong practice with our attachment to emotion thought, the barrier to love and compassion.